The Earth is a sphere, isn't it? We've been told this since childhood. But what if what we know about the world is only part of the truth? What if the existence of the flat Earth theory isn't just a misconception, but something more? After all, if history is to be believed, for the first 3,000 years of civilization, people were convinced otherwise. And it's precisely this historical fact that makes us pause, doesn't it? And perhaps this is only the beginning of larger questions about our universe. Flat Earth. That's no joke, right? This is probably the first thing that comes to mind when confronted with this theory. And yes, this is not a joke. It is with this paradox that we will begin our conversation. From childhood, we are drilled with two immutable facts. 2 + 2 = 4, and the Earth is a sphere. These are the fundamentals, the foundation of our understanding of reality, ingrained in our consciousness from the first days of school. But what if I told you that there were times in history when everything was completely different? According to the official version, for the first 3,000 years of our civilization, people devoutly believed in a flat Earth covered by the firmament. Religions, the church, and the entire way of life spoke of this. And then, in 1548, Nicholas Copernicus came onto the scene, turning everything on its head and declaring the inconceivable rotation of the Earth around its axis and the Sun. Is this a delusion or something more? Let's figure it out together. And so, leaving behind the debate about the shape of the Earth, we inevitably come to the question of its origin. Our solar system is not simply a collection of planets orbiting a star. Its structure, distinct from other star systems, makes us wonder, is it the result of someone's design? In other words, was it created artificially? This thought leads us to the concept of a galactic super-civilization that may have designed our solar system. And if so, what is the purpose of this design? Perhaps we are part of an experiment to grow intelligent life in the universe, and our development is being overseen by stellar curators. Reflections on our place in the universe and our purpose seem increasingly relevant. Let's assume that we are part of someone's experiment, and our solar system was created by some cosmic intelligence. But what could have happened then that required the intervention of our creators? Apparently, a real threat arose to destroy the part of the galaxy where we live. What it was remains a mystery. A giant black hole, interstellar clouds, or perhaps a supernova explosion. Having learned of this danger, the super-civilization, apparently without hesitation, decided to save the life they had seeded. They created a kind of cosmic ark, recreating the conditions of our planet, and transferred all life there, including us, in a dreamlike state. And now, perhaps, you and I are inside this protected capsule, protected from the dangers of outer space. And what if our world is actually a flat cell in this gigantic ark? If we really do live in a cosmic ark, then naturally our creators don't want us to know, for the sake of the purity of the experiment. But is it really possible to hide such a secret from everyone? There may be people among us who know the truth, but they are keeping it secret. We are deliberately misled, with the help of technology, secret societies, and mind manipulation, maintaining the illusion of ordinary reality. But what happens when these carefully crafted illusions begin to falter? What if there are cracks in our reality that allow us to peer behind the scenes? And so, our stay on this cosmic ark, like in a dream, may last until the danger that forced our creators to take such measures passes. Or until they find a suitable planet where they can recreate the Earth we know, and then the experiment in developing intelligent life will continue in natural conditions. But how long will this wait last? And when will we again see the real sky above us, and not its holographic projection? These questions remain unanswered, leaving us alone with our own conjectures. And now, just when we are beginning to get used to the idea of living on a gigantic cosmic ark, another simply stunning thought arises. If we take into account the hypothesis of the honeycomb structure of the Earth, consisting of many similar ones to ours, halls, worlds located under protective domes, it's safe to assume that you and I may not be alone in this ark. It's entirely possible that it contains many other honeycomb worlds, with recreated habitats of other planets and their own unknown intelligent inhabitants. Imagine a giant cosmic anthill full of mysteries and secrets, where other worlds exist alongside us, worlds we don't even suspect. If gravity is endowed with such incredible force that it can hold the world's oceans, buildings, people, and atmosphere to the surface of a rapidly spinning sphere, then how is it suddenly completely powerless, allowing small birds, insects, and airplanes to move freely in any direction? Now let's consider the length of the equator. Numbers, as we know, are stubborn things. If the Earth is a sphere, then the circumference of Antarctica at latitudes of 80 to 90 degrees should be approximately 12,000 miles. But here's the paradox. James Cook and Clark Ross, sailing around Antarctica, traveled over 50,000 miles, while Challenger traveled a whopping 69,000 miles. How can this be reconciled with what we're taught in school? And planes don't fly over Antarctica because it's supposedly impossible. Why should we turn a blind eye to such contradictions? Perhaps Antarctica's ice wall hides more than we think. The moon. What about the celestial bodies? For example, the moon is a flat, luminous disk, translucent and rotating, and we always see only one side of the moon. Sometimes, on a clear night with the moon visible, you can see planets and stars through the moon. And there's a significant difference between sunlight and moonlight in many characteristics, so the moon has its own unique light. Satellites. Or what about satellites? In countries with few cell phone towers, there are problems with TV and internet reception. If the Earth were a sphere surrounded by more than 20,000 satellites, then any rural area would have reliable signal reception. In conclusion, now let's turn to antiquity, to the origins of our culture and beliefs. The Bible, the Quran, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and many other sacred books, independently of one another, speak of a geocentric, stationary, and flat Earth. The Egyptians, Hindus, Mayans, Chinese, Native Americans, and literally every ancient civilization for millennia adhered to this very same flat Earth cosmology. This isn't just a coincidence, it's the unanimous testimony of our ancestors. And most importantly, remember that, to date, not a single experiment conducted by modern scientists has been able to confirm the Earth's motion. Could all those ancient civilizations and sacred scriptures have been wrong? Perhaps it's time to rethink some of our ideas about the world. Let's talk about gravity. We've been taught since childhood that it's a force that attracts us to the Earth. But in reality, gravity remains just a theory, lacking any experimental support. All the evidence we're presented with either turns out to be falsified or doesn't produce the expected results. But what's there instead? Instead of gravity, there's free fall measured by physics at a speed of approximately 9.8 meters per second. And here the question arises, what if the Earth isn't a sphere, but rather a barrier, a plane that simply prevents us from falling further? That's why we can walk on it and don't fly off into space. And the most interesting thing is that each of you can see this for yourself. Install an accelerometer app on your smartphone, and you'll see with your own eyes those 9.8 meters per second that your phone constantly measures. So, maybe it's time to question established scientific dogma and look at the world from a different perspective. So, we've established that we live on a flat planet, with smooth oceans and convex land masses. And here the question arises, how is the space of our world structured? Several options are possible, each of which is, to put it mildly, unusual. The first option is that the Earth is flat and infinite. It sounds tempting, but as we'll see below, it's not very likely, although we won't rule it out completely. But there's a more interesting hypothesis. What if the Earth is a looped point in space? Imagine a game of Pac-Man where when you enter a portal on the left, you immediately emerge on the right. Perhaps our planet is structured similarly, with such portals existing all around its perimeter. Mysterious, isn't it? So, of all the possible ways our world could be structured, we've settled on the idea that we live in a confined space under a dome. And you know what? Our physics only confirms this idea. Let's look at our atmosphere and hydrosphere. They, oddly enough, are proof of the existence of boundaries in our world. We know that with increasing altitude, air density and water pressure decrease due to free fall. Maximum pressure and density are reached at the Earth's surface, which is the very barrier. It makes sense. If our world had no boundaries, air and water would not have constant density and pressure. And that's just the beginning. Based on ancient scriptures, we can assume that our reality is multi-layered. The firmament and the worlds beneath us are concepts recurring in many religions. Remember the Kola super-deep borehole, which was suddenly closed. Perhaps it created a hole into the world beneath us? Imagine a multitude of isolated worlds like our own, enclosed within a gigantic arc. Each is a separate cell, protected from the outside world. However, at certain points of power, marked by ancient megalithic structures, unique portals are located that allow travel between these worlds. In our world, most of these portals are inactive, but the personnel operating the Ark possess technologies that allow not only travel between cells, but also the ability to assume the appearance of inhabitants of different worlds. This hypothesis opens up incredible possibilities and makes us wonder about the scale of the technology possessed by our possibly invisible curators. We've discussed the flat Earth theory, but what evidence do its proponents offer us? Perhaps the most obvious evidence, which we can directly observe every day, is the identical sizes of the stars in our sky. Although round Earth conspiracy theorists claim it's just a coincidence, the probability of such a coincidence in the world of chance is 1 in 300 million, which is scientifically impossible. Added to this fact are the coincidental orbits of the stars, which allow us to see a total eclipse. The probability of this event in the world of chance and fiction is 1 in 4 billion, which is also possible only because our Earth is flat and was created by God. The second fact is the principle of communicating vessels. When water fills any container, be it a glass, a saucepan, or a lake, the water always pushes air upward and forms a straight line on the surface. Straight relative to what? Strictly horizontal, relative to a level, etc. If you look at communicating vessels, the water level in them will also appear as a straight line, regardless of the number of vessels, regardless of the distance between the communicating vessels. All surveying instruments operate on this principle, a straight line. No corrections are made for the curvature of the Earth during surveying, regardless of the measuring distance. Surveyors, pilots, drillers, architects all base their calculations on the assumption that the Earth is flat. But what about surface tension? It does exist, but its strength is so weak that it only forms rain in the form of small droplets, not giant water bombs. You can pour a heap of liquid into a glass, but the heap will be negligible, half a drop high. The same would be true for a basin or a lake. This force is not enough to hold all the water in the world's oceans on the round surface of the Earth. We've talked about water. Let's move on to ships. Do ships disappear over the horizon? Everyone knows this, everyone has seen it. But this is simply the limitations of our visual system and the law of perspective. Use more powerful optics, and the ship is visible again. Just as a lighthouse can be seen from vast distances at sea through a powerful telescope. Gravity and the law of universal gravitation are not the same thing. Don't confuse them. Gravity exists. The law of universal gravitation doesn't. Otherwise, all large bodies would attract smaller bodies. But this doesn't happen. At what speed does the Earth rotate? In 1 second, the Earth rotates 0.5 kilometers. Why don't we feel this? And if you throw a ball into the air and it falls back down after 3 seconds, why does it land in the same place and not 1.5 kilometers away? Pilots and captains plot their ship's routes using flat maps without taking into account the curvature of the Earth. And if you add rotational speed to the curvature, how can you even reach your destination, especially if you're flying against the direction of the planet's rotation? If the Earth were constantly rotating eastward at 1,000 miles per hour, then the flight time of an airplane heading east should be significantly different from the flight time of a plane heading west. But the flight time is actually the same in both directions. If gravity is endowed with such incredible force that it can hold the world's oceans, buildings, people, and atmosphere to the surface of a rapidly spinning sphere, then how is it suddenly completely powerless, allowing small birds, insects, and airplanes to move freely in any direction? Now, let's consider the length of the equator. Numbers, as we know, are stubborn things. If the Earth is a sphere, then the circumference of Antarctica at latitudes of 80 to 90 degrees should be approximately 12,000 miles. But here's the paradox. James Cook and Clark Ross, sailing around Antarctica, traveled over 50,000 miles, while Challenger traveled a whopping 69,000 miles. How can this be reconciled with what we're taught in school? And planes don't fly over Antarctica because it's supposedly impossible. Why should we turn a blind eye to such contradictions? Perhaps Antarctica's ice wall hides more than we think. The moon. What about the celestial bodies? For example, the moon is a flat, luminous disk, translucent and rotating, and we always see only one side of the moon. Sometimes, on a clear night with the moon visible, you can see planets and stars through the moon. And there's a significant difference between sunlight and moonlight in many characteristics, so the moon has its own unique light. Satellites. Or what about satellites? In countries with few cell phone towers, there are problems with TV and internet reception. If the Earth were a sphere surrounded by more than 20,000 satellites, then any rural area would have reliable signal reception. In conclusion, now let's turn to antiquity, to the origins of our culture and beliefs. The Bible, the Quran, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and many other sacred books, independently of one another, speak of a geocentric, stationary, and flat Earth. The Egyptians, Hindus, Mayans, Chinese, Native Americans, and literally every ancient civilization held precisely this flat Earth cosmology for millennia. This isn't just a coincidence, it's the unanimous testimony of our ancestors. And most importantly, remember that to date, not a single experiment conducted by modern scientists has been able to